Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about how do you measure your health and a number of other things. Um, so the question here is how do you measure your health? So that means how do you at what point do you consider yourself healthy? What metrics do you use? I don't mean like really technical stuff like blood test results and things like that. I just mean general things that you can just look at and sense and tell about yourself or about another person. When you look at another person, how are you going to judge if they're healthy? How can you tell? And I think a lot of people get pretty delusional about that. They get too stuck on the ideology of their diet. That's a hard word. I started to say ideological there, but you had to put the stress in a different syllable, so it didn't come out right. But anyways, people get too hung up on the ideology, the theory behind the whatever diet and lifestyle methods they're following, and that blinds them to any possible failures they might be having. And that's a problem, right? And that's largely the fault of the combination of the gurus that they're following, dispensing advice that's dumb, that leads them astray, and those people just not really critically analyzing the advice they're receiving from various gurus and books that they've read and stuff like that. So people will cling to certain principles religiously. They repeat the same mantras over. For example, fasting is nature's operating table. Fasting is nature's operating table. Okay, great. Test that theory, right? And sometimes, in some situations, that theory is great. In other situations, it's not. But if you repeat the mantra over and over again, it becomes religious. It's no longer something that you can falsify. It becomes a non-falsifiable theory, which is totally useless, right? Any theory you have about your health and lifestyle should be falsifiable. There should be at some point, if you get certain results from it, there should be the possibility that you get results that cause you to decide that theory is incorrect. If there does not exist that possibility, then you're only stuck to the ideology. The theory is non-falsifiable. So anyways, back to this results thing. So I know like I always talk about the raw vegan versus paleo diet just because those are two, like, it's kind of a false dichotomy, but I'm drawing that to lump all the variants of each thing because it's kind of like two schools of thought. Are humans frugivores? Are humans carnivores? Is the truth on one end or the other? Is it somewhere in between? All the theories we're coming up with, we have to kind of test that. But there's also all these variants of the carnivore and the paleo I use and the raw vegan diet. For example, the raw vegan diet, there's raw vegan fruitarians, there's fruitarians who eat some animal products, and there's fruitarians who don't. There's fruitarians who literally eat just fruit, and there's some who use the word loosely to pretty much include vegetables as well. And sometimes eat nuts and seeds. They still call it fruitarian because it's just like the word vegetarian. It doesn't mean that you eat pure only vegetables, nothing else. Vegetarians eat many things that are not vegetables. So anyone who says the word fruitarian must mean that you eat only fruit, they're stupid. They're just being religious about it. I'm not saying you can certainly use the word fruitarian to mean that you eat pure only fruit and nothing else. That's great, but don't get on people's backs who call themselves fruitarian but are eating nuts and seeds and various other things. If they're eating a diet based on fruit, like a frugivore diet, and they call it fruitarian, based on like common word usage, that's good enough. You don't want to make an argument based around if somebody's using the word in an accepted way, and you've decided personally that's not acceptable. That's a waste of everyone's time. So don't do that. But anyways, so there's all these different brand names of the raw vegan TM movement, and so there's the 80-10-10 thing. There's the mucus diet healing system, which does, I know that's not strictly a raw vegan fruitarian diet, but it veers into that. Like the end goal is something approximating that. It's basically like a transition system to get there, to the supposedly non-mucus forming foods, which again, the Arnold Ehret's books, as I mentioned in previous videos, they're full of theories that you can test. But if you have decided that you're going to religiously believe in those theories because of how well they were presented in the books, and you receive evidence to the contrary, like seeing guys following that stuff for like 10 years and they're just skinny and not fit at all, and they look like they fulfill the sickly vegan stereotype, although they might have good skin and generally not be sick, but they're not like, how can you measure them as being healthy if they have pretty much no muscle mass and they spend most of their days sitting around doing nothing? Whatever. So we have again, the 80-10-10 thing, the various different types of and strictnesses of fruitarianism. And there's things like going into raw till 4 and then whole food plant-based, which is more starches and beans. Right, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the paleo group, which I use to refer to everything from like paleo, pure carnivore, nose to tail carnivore, the primal diet, various other animal, basically diets that are based on meat and certain other animal products. And I've discussed in other videos the nutritional problems associated with both the diets in the raw vegan camp and the diets in the paleo camp. So that's why you'll see some paleo diet people who are doing pretty great and they're fit and healthy and using some general measure of health without getting too deep into it. Sometimes you can see those people and be like, yeah, this person's healthy. He doesn't seem to have hair problems. He doesn't seem to have skin problems. He's got muscles. He's fit. He's able to be physically active. He's got energy. He seems pretty happy. And that's great. But then you see other people on a paleo type approach and they have red faces, which right away is an indicator of vitamin A toxicity in the liver. According to at least one study that I've seen. But anyways, sometimes they have a permanently red face. It's really weird. Like Lauren Cordain had that for a while, and some of the other paleo gurus had bright red face, really not sunburn, just red face, right? When your skin changes color, it's because of your liver, generally. It's like raw vegans turning orange because they had too much carrot juice, and they think when their skin is not orange anymore, they're fine. No, your liver is still chock full of retinol, beta-carotene converted to retinol, various forms of retinol. Your liver is still incredibly toxic after that. That doesn't go away just because your skin is not orange anymore. You do that to yourself once, and you're screwed for a while. But anyways, so the paleo diet people that you see failing are the ones that are overweight, right? Not just the red face, they're also overweight. They don't look like they're that fit, and they often will have skin problems. And so looking back on the raw vegan camp, you'll see the stereotypical sickly vegan is like amplified in the raw vegan movement. You see tons of guys who are just really skinny and have no energy, and they say they're healthy and they feel, and they, but generally they live a sedentary lifestyle. Their physical activity is just slow walks and yoga. They looking at them, they have no muscle mass, they're skinny. Sometimes they have gaunt faces, depending on how far they go into the constant like fasting under eating kind of thing. And oftentimes they have skin problems, and people who were never diagnosed with eczema might not realize they have eczema. But if you have itchy skin, if your skin regularly gets itchy in a certain part of your body a few times a week, you can say that you have eczema, right? It's chronic skin irritation. And so, for example, you might have on your scalp, maybe you get dandruff and itchy scalp, but you've been eating a whole foods plant-based and on and off raw vegan diet for 10 years. So how do you still have this problem? And you've done a bunch of water fasts. I thought fasting was nature's operating table. So how many fasts do you need to do before these problems resolve yourselves? If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, that's the definition of insanity. So that's why I wonder sometimes whether it's the paleo diet person or the raw vegan person, and they have certain problems that persist or even show up. Oh yeah, cavities, that's another issue. Or the raw vegans, the fruitarians especially, these guys and girls tend to get tons of cavities, more so than the people on the paleo diet. Like I've never really heard of paleo people destroying their mouthful of teeth. And I know you guys who are listening to this, who are really vegan, are like, well, what do you mean? The way more people in the dentist's office who've rotted all the teeth out of their mouth are eating the standard American diet. Great, I'm not talking about the standard American diet at all. I'm just talking about how many guys that have come through these communities that I've seen either just completely destroy their teeth or just get like another cavity every 2 years. And supposedly they're eating the world's healthiest diet and fasting is nature's operating table and getting to the root cause of the problem. But those are all noble principles, but it depends on what strategy you're using to follow those principles. And if it's obviously not working and you're not admitting that, then you're following an ideology or a belief that's non-falsifiable. So it's purely religious based on faith, and that's really dangerous. If you're not getting results and you're kind of delusional, you don't really understand that if you've been doing water and juice fasts and eating a raw whatever diet for 10 years, or you've been eating only meat and liver, muscle meat and liver and milk for the last 5 years, and you're still just like, oh, well, I have years of detox to go ahead of me. I screwed myself so bad. I just need to, it gets worse. Sometimes every year I'm worse than I am the last year, but I know it's just all this detox I have to go through. And well, how long are you going to wait? Like, what's the time period of your experiment? Give yourself 6 months, 1 year. If you're still seeing, like people will get better at the beginning, but then other problems will show up and get worse. And eventually they have to admit to themselves. But if you're one of those people that will never admit it to yourself, it's useful. You're never going to be healthy, but you will always call yourself healthy. And you will always consider yourself more healthy than your standard whatever diet eating neighbor, even though if that person might measure, like I know this guy who is, when I was a kid growing up, he was like 60 and he ate a slightly healthier version of the standard American diet, which, slightly healthier. And his savor was probably that he ate, he ate pretty lean. He was a skinny guy. He was fit. He did a lot of exercise, a lot of like extreme backcountry long distance hiking and running and cycling and canoeing and stuff. And for his age, he was insane. He looked so good for his age. And I was thinking, like, especially when I had Lyme disease a couple years ago, but even the past few years, I think like, wow, that guy at 60 eating a standard American diet is way healthier than I was at 25, 26, or whatever age, when I was in like the depth of having health problems from whatever diet I was eating at the time. I know some people who were around me at the time remember there were times I was bedridden for random days. I just would never get out of bed. I would just randomly get sick for no reason. I would blame it on parasites, which is what I think a lot of people do in the raw vegan camp, or anyone who's really doing lots and lots of enemas and herbal cleanses. They blame all their problems on parasites. Well, how is it that many people who live in the tropics and don't pay any attention to parasites don't have all the problems? I know genetics and everybody is different, but again, my general point here is like, be objective about what results you're getting from what you're doing, and don't be afraid to make changes and experiment, and give your experiment a time frame, like 6 months, 1 year. Like, how long are you going to do this before you accept that something about this is wrong? I either need to change it completely or tweak something about it, you know? And people don't do that, and that's why we have guys like who going on and off the paleo diet and going binges because they can't stay on keto, because they don't realize that humans never ate keto year round. You know, even the Eskimos will eat more plant foods in the spring, the few months a year they have access to it, but they're not a good example because they don't exactly have the best health. But looking at even like European hunter-gatherer tribes 30,000 years ago, like I've said in previous videos, half the year you eat basically mammoth meat. The other half of the year you eat basically berries and twigs and tubers and roots and rabbits, whatever animals they could get at the time. But obviously it's generally easier to forage plant foods than it is to hunt animals. So again, that's why, okay, I lost my track there. Yeah, I wonder if there's some nutritional deficiency that causes people to randomly lose their track in the middle of a sentence, right? Of course there are, and I generally know what they are, but I wonder if you know. Anyways, so there's looking back in your ancestry, you see people eating certain ways, and you can kind of make lots of guesses and figure out how you should eat. But two things you should realize: that first of all, just cause, like, you don't know what people ate back then. In fact, you're listening to a lot of people telling you that people ate a certain way, but they may not have even looked at the archaeological evidence. But also, you're assuming that nature is perfect. This is echoed in a lot of like paleo and raw vegans. They both believe that nature is perfect. If they do what they think nature said, they will have great health. But the problem is, first of all, they have two totally different interpretations of nature. Second of all, they assume that nature is perfect. Nature should not be perfect. It would be a total loss of evolutionary efficiency. Nature just has to be good enough. You can look at nature and see a lot of things and think, wow, that's perfect. But then things you don't see are like the sick animals, the animals that eat plants that poison them and they die. All kinds of problems, animals that die of starvation in the wild because there's not seasonal availability of certain foods. When natural climate changes, again, like, yeah, not... Humans causing climate change is kind of an arrogant joke, considering that there have been so many mass extinctions, including the current one, which is brought on by humans. I would say have a small part in it, but natural changes caused by natural global temperature shifts and pole shifts and geomagnetic excursions every once in a while. If you're checking out the Suspicious Observers YouTube channel, those kinds of things have way more of an effect on nature than humans could ever even the most evil human on the planet could never even dream of coming even close to doing even a fraction of the damage that the sun has done and the galaxy has done to the earth over the millennia, right? So anyway, so yeah, nature is not perfect. And so nature evolves just enough to get its stuff done, right? We see all these species that are designed perfectly, supposedly perfectly by nature, but nature is perfect is a human invention. Perfect doesn't exist in nature. It's a concept in the human brain, right? So we say, oh, because humans did this because, right, Eskimos eat polar bear livers, therefore that's natural and good, and that's perfect because nature is perfect, designed it that way. But really, no, nature is not perfect, it's just good enough. So the Eskimos could survive, but they still got schizophrenia from eating too much polar bear liver. The same thing with other animals eating things that are their species-specific diet. There are maybe things in that diet that are not good for them, and things might go off balance and kill them. The point is that the species is surviving good enough to continue, so nature isn't perfect, nature is good enough. Remember that whenever you're listening to any kind of appeal to nature fallacy argument based on like, okay, humans did this in the past, therefore that's perfect, therefore we should do that, therefore it'll work. And there's all these jumps, there's all these begging the question fallacies in between every step of the argument. They're like the paleo diet people that are like, well, because we think that the hunter-gatherers ate this way, ketosis year-round, lots of organ meats, and like, therefore, we should do it now. And therefore, us doing it now will also result in us having amazing health, and they just treat that's it. But no, you have to prove each of those things. So not only like did we actually do it a long time ago? Did we actually eat 100% keto all year round? And if we didn't, is there some argument to show why it should be done today? Should you be in ketosis all year round, even though our caveman ancestors didn't do that year round? Possibly a fraction of a year, right? And possibly even not, because even in the winter you can harvest frozen tubers under the ground, but whatever. Certainly possible that humans during ice ages all over the world, and including in the north, everyone says just the people in the north. Well, the people in the south were also subject to ice ages and cold period, and they migrated all over, and their evolution was subject to all matter. Like the indigenous people in South America, oh, they're tropical. They never spent their winters eating mammoth, and yes, they did. They spent their winters eating raw frozen yak meat because they came down. They migrated from Asia. So based on what I've read in genetic research, there is this tribe very, very long time ago, genetic evidence showing the existence of these people that are called the ancient North Europeans, right? This mystical race from a very long time ago. The ancient North Europeans, some of them migrated eastward basically across what is now Russia. And as they went into Russia and into Asia, they started to mix genetically with Asian people that were alive back then, Asian tribes. And what we ended up having was this group that was, on the average, a mix of 10 to 15% ancient North European genetics and maybe 85% Asian genetics that went across the Bering Strait into North America and into South America. How many thousands of years did those people spend eating elk? Whatever they have in Asia. I don't know. They have mountain goats and yaks and stuff like that. And in North America even. This was after the mammoths. By the way, there were no mammoths in North America when they arrived there in 5000 BC or whatever. But and in America, they were eating bison and all that kind of stuff. And then finally, they came down to South America, where in some areas there still are wild ruminant animals in really cold winters in South America, where they would not be able to eat plant foods in the winter. But then there are tropical areas where there's Amazon rainforest, and everyone assumes there's fruit year round. But let me tell you, as someone who's walked around the Amazon rainforest, like you're SOL, right? You're a bad word out of luck, right? There's nothing. I mean, if you know, certainly if you walk around with an indigenous person, they'll tell you what can be eaten, but most of it's actually vegetation, like the roots of palm trees and things that would generally be full of anti-nutrients that you can survive on, and they survived on, but it wasn't perfect because nature's not perfect. Nature's just good enough. And so, and then a few months out of the year, there are wild fruits, but they're very sparse. They're not easy to come across. You have to know, and then so they're sparse, so only a very small hunter-gatherer population can subsist off those, but even so, only a few months out of the year. And then later in the year, there might be some other random wild fruit that comes into season for a bit, but also, because of rainfall differences, sometimes the season is skipped. Sometimes there's almost no wild fruit in a year, and sometimes there's a lot. All right, so anyone who's telling you, I bet the indigenous tribes in South America were fully fruitarian, raw vegan fruitarian until the European, whatever. They got here in 5000 BC, and there is one tribe in Brazil that supposedly eats mostly fruits, and they're known for being very fit and strong. Again, like mostly fruits, right? So they're probably actually eating a diet similar to the bonobos, where they're eating mostly fruits, some greens, and a little bit of animal products, mirroring the diet of the bonobos. So what am I getting at here? I'm not trying to formulate your theory of the ancient human diet. I'm just trying to say it's so complicated that anyone who's telling you that all humans should eat X diet because they think this is how it happened many years ago, they're probably wrong. But even if they were right, it doesn't mean you should follow it, because you should also try to answer the question, why does that mean that's what we should do now? Will it work now? And then if you've decided that it might work now, then you try it. But then it doesn't work on you, right? Or do you see it working on others around you that have tried it? And if it doesn't, first of all, you have to be honest. That's why you have to decide what I said at the beginning of the video. How are you measuring health, right? Are you measuring it? It's like a 15-year wishy-washy detox journey where the person never really seems to get better. They do make small improvements in certain areas. And yeah, initially they solve their chronic health problem, but still 10 years later, after however many enemas and this and that, and raw goat milk fasts or orange juice fast for 6 months that sent a certain prominent raw vegan guru to the hospital. We're not allowed to talk about that, but it happened, right? And so is your health measured by these ideas that are unfalsifiable? It's just this long journey that never really gets you anywhere, but you're delusional enough to think that it's getting you somewhere, right? So you got to answer those questions, like, are the people around me that I see or on the internet who are doing it, are they actually getting the results that they should be getting? And if not, do I have to throw the idea out completely, or are there some things about it that are still good, or do I have to tweak it? And maybe you become the genius that finds out how to make something work. Maybe. Anyways, a few minutes ago, so I was mentioning the examples of the paleo diet people that do well and the ones that don't. So again, the raw vegan diet people, there are some notable raw vegan athletes. In fact, actually, many of them aren't raw vegan anymore. The celebrity raw vegan athletes that we knew of some years ago, most of them are not eating raw vegan anymore, but some, of course, some still are. And so there are some, of course, and there are vegan, not raw vegan, but there are generally cooked vegan bodybuilders who are setting world records. But then again, there's this stereotype that vegans don't like. It's like, oh, all the vegan bodybuilders built up most of their mass on meat and then switched to vegan afterwards to maintain it. And even, the vegans who are into those kinds of sports will say, yes, that's true. They all did that. Can't really think of vegan bodybuilders that were vegan for their entire life. There may be some examples. I'm not saying there aren't any, but in general, like, we're talking about statistics and numbers and what's the chance of you being able to accomplish that. So if you want to be fit and have muscle, are you following the exact same TM copyright R raw vegan, brand of raw veganism where you see all these really skinny, weak guys coming from? Or are you following the brand of paleo diet where you see all these overweight, middle-aged guys with red faces coming from? Because neither of those two approaches are probably going to work on you unless you have some genius way to change it to make it work for you. If you see it not working on everybody else, why would it work on you? However, you have to be honest about whether it's working on other people. A lot of people will read online testimonials and see YouTube videos and not really realize, well, what's happening here. I remember this lady on Facebook was talking about how she had been mostly raw vegan for like 10 years and she was still battling terrible eczema, you know what I mean? Yeah, it got better after she started her diet, but it did not go away and it just persisted after so many years. And she's like, hopefully this water fast that I do will finally do some healing. I'm doing a 40-day water fast. It's like 40 days is when you start to get memory loss and stuff like that. So I'm not saying that you should, and no one should ever do a 40-day water fast, but you start to have problems, and really after doing a bunch of water fasts over many years and your problem has not been solved. But you can find, if you look hard enough, you can find protocols where people have cured their eczema very quickly. So why are you waiting 10 years, lady on Facebook? Like, what? You're not being honest with yourself that whatever you're doing is not working. So you're just going to keep doing more of the same. More water fasts, longer water fasts. Fasting is nature's operating table. Fasting is nature's operating table. And so for her, it becomes a religion with basically a non-falsifiable ideology. You can't challenge it for some reason in your mind. That's the only thing that'll work. It's not working, but you have to keep trying and doing it because there's nothing else that you'll consider, or you can't think of a way to tweak it to make it work aside from just doing it more and doing it harder, which doesn't make any sense, right? So paleo people having problems. I'm going to start eating an entire liver every day, doing it harder, right? So they just become more and more toxic. The guys on my Facebook, one day they're here at Fruithaven eating a fruitarian raw vegan diet and fasting. A few months later, they're in whatever their home country in Europe making a video of a liver, blueberry, cow brain smoothie raw. And so they didn't even wait. They went so hard into the other thing, like really hard into it. And man, like you can't think like that. You can't go through life like that. It's not, you gotta be objective and honest and like, what is working? What is working for me? What is not working for me? What is working on the people around me? What is not? And if you don't have examples, if you only see people on the internet, you're probably being misled because there's a lot of selective stuff, both, again, paleo world and the raw vegan world. You're being misled in a lot of ways. But look, like, is it working for you and is it working for other people? And are my metrics for is it working or not, are they actually realistic, or are they just based on religion? Are they based on blind belief in the principles, the mantras that I repeat to myself daily while passing the beads between my fingers, while reading from the Arnold Ehret Dialect Healing System book? Enough of that. Now is not the time to be weak and rotting away. Now is not the time. I don't know if you've noticed, but the WEF and the global elites are staging a great reset, take over the world. They built these massive stones in Georgia that clearly say, oh, the world's population should be maintained at 500 million. They want to kill off most of the world population. And we're in the middle of, they're overreaching, they're reaching so far for that right now. Now is not the time for you to be wasting away on your next 40-day juice fast or 10-day goat milk fast, or just like getting terrible results from what you're doing. And no, you need to find quickly what works for you and do it. Stop being dishonest. You need to not be a skinny, gaunt, weak person or a overweight, red-faced person. Right, you need to be effective. Your mind needs to be clear. No brain fog. We're in the time right now. It's like slaughter time, and we're all cattle in a field. But some of the cattle have already escaped up to the mountains, right? But when it comes time, if you haven't escaped to the mountains yet, when it comes time to, escape to the mountains and fight off the wolves that are coming after you, are you gonna be able to do that? You like 10-year running, pale, eyes sunken into the head, skinny, no muscle mass, raw 100% TM fruitarian, all rights reserved, or are you going to be like the fat, overweight, paleo, on and off, can't keep keto, trolls vegans on the internet, can't get it up, eczema, whatever, copper and vitamin A toxicity, paleo diet, primal diet, or even better, Michaela Peterson, carnivore plus pharmaceutical pills diet, Like, are you going to survive? Now is not the time to be continuing your religious, wasting yourself away in a cave somewhere and posting on the internet about your latest fasting journey while you have no muscle mass. Right now is the time to get strong and fit so you can actually defeat the global elite when it comes time. We're not waging war against the global elite right now. That would be silly. They would crush everybody. You have to kind of wait on the sidelines, And when they kill everybody off, which they're going to do, you have to be one of the ones that survive. You're on a bus on a cliff road in Bolivia. You're on death road with 37 other people. The bus falls off the cliff. It's reported in the news. Bus falls off cliff in Bolivia, death road. 31 people died. But wait, there was 37 people on the bus. 2 jumped out the windows before the bus fell off the cliff. 5 stayed on the bus, and through sheer luck and the cushioning of the seats where they were positioned, they just happened to survive. They had injuries, they recovered in the hospital for several months, but they survived. 200-meter drop, right? I've seen examples of that on the news before. That's the kind of person you want to be. You could be the person that jumps out of the bus beforehand, the really smart person, or you could be the person that sits in there and hopes and prays, and yeah, maybe you'll survive, get yourself in a good position. Maybe your body's strong and fit so you can really brace yourself in between these 2 seats while all the bodies are flying around you. So that's kind of my metaphor for how you are going to survive the coming onslaughts, which, again, is not really a physical onslaught. It's literally just there's no food or medicine or fuel, so nobody can eat or do anything, so 90% of people die within a year. 50% of them die within the first 3 months due to lack of medication, right? That's what it is. And that takes a different kind of strength. It takes lots of physical strength because you have to be working all day long to defend yourself, defend your property, grow food, lots of physical work all of a sudden. Economies collapse, so you can't just pay someone to do it. If you're rich right now, that's not going to help you much unless you have a lot of goods to barter with. So if you're wealthy. So whatever situation you're in, obviously you need physical strength and mental strength. So if you have brain fog from the types of toxicities that you get on both the paleo and the raw vegan diet, or if you are physically weak due to various issues on the fruitarian fasting religion diet or the paleo destroy your liver, gain weight, and get a red face diet, it's not, those kinds of things are not going to take you very far. So get realistic, get honest, start searching for those little beacons of truth out there. Who's going to survive and who's not, It's not, we're not going to be able to, can we say the 95%? Do we want to? Those are all the ones that supported the COVID crap. Even if we wanted to, could we? I think the idea that it will be more successful is you wait for that all to happen, you survive, and then at the end, the global elite either fizzle out or it's super easy to take them out because with all their how do you say that word, hubris? With all their overconfidence and their overreaching, they assume they'll come out on top at the end with all this weaponry, but they'll have calculated a lot of stuff and they'll just collapse and fizzle out, and it'll be very easy for the remnants of civilization to take them out. And hey, that'll be the smart 5% that survive. So be part of that 5%, don't be an idiot. That's all I got to say for today, folks. Come on down to the Amazon Fruit Festival in January 17 to 23, 2023, down here in Southeast Ecuador, short flight ticket away from Fort Lauderdale. Cheap flight ticket from Fort Lauderdale, and start buying tickets now. We've already started selling tickets. If you want a cabin, you got to buy a ticket soon because cabins always sell out first. Other than that, we have camping under a big roof pavilion type thing, so you're not going to get all rained on and muddy and stuff. You set up your tent under that or use a tent from us. Check out AmazonFruitFestival.com, also fruithaven.org, terrafruitis.com, yourbrainonfruit.com, which is my website, which, hey, I should update soon. Anyways, have a great day, folks.